So 151, in my opinion, proves a lot of Pokemon investors wrong, especially those that think that Prismatic Evolutions is going to be printed into the ground and it's going to go to MSRP or below, and that things are going to crash, it's going to be worthless, and nobody's going to care for it. 151 proves everything that people say about about Prismatic Evolutions to be wrong. I mean, 151, in my opinion, is the best comparison to Prismatic because of just how popular both sets are, and they're both specialty sets. Obviously, 151 is a lot older than Prismatic Evolutions, but it is a specialty set, and it has had time to get reprinted, and sort of, in my opinion, proves this whole reprint into the ground and being worthless is sort of not going to really happen with Prismatic Evolutions. So 151, like I said, it's an older set. It was released on September 22nd of 2023. So at this point, it's about a year and a half old, a little bit more than that. So it is much older than Prismatic, but it's still in rotation. It could still get reprinted. It's not like out of print or anything like that. And 151, 151 obviously is a very popular set because it's first gen Pokemon. And 151, it being a very popular set, a lot of people like opening it, especially because the points are not that difficult. And as you can see here, it's sort of that's reflected with the prices of the cards. There's no extremely expensive card like in Prismatic Evolutions where there's a card that's above $1,000. The Charizard here is $200. Next most expensive card is not even $100. The Blastoise is $70. Venusaur is $65. But there's a lot of nice and cool artworks, but just overall the set isn't very expensive. As you can see here, the total set value is about $1,100. Now, when you compare this to Prismatic Evolutions, I can just quickly pull it up here. Prismatic Evolutions, you can see how much more expensive Prismatic Evolutions is compared to 151. So 151 is not as expensive as Prismatic by far. And when you even take this into consideration, right, that the total set value is 1100, right? And you see how much cheaper it is compared to Prismatic. And you look at the product prices, which I'm going to show you guys here. It makes Prismatic Evolutions look very cheap all of a sudden. And I've talked about this so many times. Obviously, 151 is an older set. It's had time for scarcity to come into play, yes. But that sort of proves my point that Prismatic Evolutions, especially like I've said, if you can buy ETBs at $100 or under, it's a pretty good buy. Why? Because look at 151. 151 is so much cheaper, and as you will see here, the product prices have not crashed, they have not got reprinted into the ground, and some products got reprinted multiple times, and they are not MSRP or below. I'm telling you, this whole talk with Prismatic Evolutions, somehow because this set, I don't know, it's come out, like, I guess, I don't know, in the past few months, and Pokemon made that statement that all of a sudden, this, for just this one set, is going to be the set to be printed into the ground, and it's going to be worthless, even though the total set value is over six grand. Like, it's so crazy to me that's even an argument, because I feel like if you want to make an argument to be printing stuff into the ground, look at 151. 151, in my opinion, you think about it, you look at the card prices, it's not that old of a set. The product should not be this expensive. Why doesn't Pokemon also print 151 into the ground? Why don't they print ETBs, all these other products into the ground? Because guess what? 151, I would argue, is as popular or more popular than Prismatic Evolutions. And I could argue that people probably like opening up 151 more than Prismatic because the points are not as hard. Why doesn't Pokemon print sets like these into the ground? Why is it just Prismatic that gets, just hammered, that, people say they're going to just print Prismatic into the ground and this set's going to be worthless? But you don't hear this about 151. It's a very strange thing to me because 151 is still in rotation. It can 100% still get reprinted. Why are they not reprinting all these products? Because if you look, especially with the values of the cards and the product prices, they make 0 cents. And like I said, compared to Prismatic, Prismatic looks very cheap then. So if we take a look, first here, and this is the main one I want to talk about, the ETB. 151 ETBs are $235. Now I want to let you, let that sink in for a second. $235, not for a PC ETB. We're talking about a normal Elite Trainer box. And how old is this set? Like I said, it's about a year and a half old, still in rotation, could still get reprinted. Why hasn't Pokemon reprinted 151 ETBs into the ground? It's very expensive. It's way more expensive than Prismatic ETBs. It's about double as expensive as Prismatic. It is older, but it's still in print. It's still in rotation. And when you look at how expensive this has gotten in just 6 months, which is when about this whole boom happened, Pokemon at this point, I don't see why they haven't had any attention brought to 151 ETBs. Look at this. 6 months ago, these ETBs were $115, right? Which is what, double MSRP? And you see where it's at now. It's pretty much quadruple MSRP. Why is Pokemon not printing 151 into the ground? 151 is a very popular set. Where are the ETB reprints? I mean, look at the year chart for this ETB. Like, where was the reprints, the printing into the ground that everyone says that's going to happen to Prismatic? Where is the reprinting for 151? Why is it not happening? It's very strange, right? Why are they not reprinting? This is a very expensive modern box. I mean, $235 for a normal ETB, that's ridiculous. Why are people not complaining about 151 being this expensive and Pokemon not reprinting this set, right? Why is it just Prismatic that gets hated on and people want it to be worthless, but 151, people don't talk about it? 151 PC ETBs. They're basically at this point $500. This, listing doesn't really count. They're $500. People talk about, PC ETBs or Prismatic being expensive when they drop to 230. Like, I'm not paying quadruple MSRP. Well, you want to talk about, 8 times MSRP at $500? I mean, that's pretty crazy. And this set is not even 2 years old. 151 UPCs. These not too long ago were around $90 at Costco, maybe around like a year ago or so. These are triple MSRP. No one talks about these being printed into the ground. Blooming Waters. I'm pretty sure this is getting reprinted again or something. I mean, it's double MSRP. No one really talks about this. 151 booster bundles. These have gotten reprinted multiple times. And guess what? If you look at the year chart, it has never dropped to MSRP. MSRP, I believe, is $27, and it's never dropped there. You have seen some pretty big, dips when it's gotten reprinted. But other than that, like, it's never hit MSRP. So, and this is the most reprinted product from 151. So, this is just a perfect example, in my opinion, of the whole argument of being worthless, MSRP, and under for Prismatic. It's just a lot of nonsense, in my opinion, because 151 could be argued just as much that this set should be and could be printed into the ground, but nobody argues that. Why is it just Prismatic? And like I said, 151 could be argued to be more popular or, a little bit less popular than Prismatic, but it's up there. People, a lot of people came back to Pokemon because of 151. This was definitely one of the sets in Scarlet and Violet when it wasn't popular that actually got some traction. So 151, I just don't understand why this set doesn't get any sort of, talks about huge reprints and those sorts of things, even though it's not that old of a set and it's extremely expensive. But when you talk about Prismatic, just because it's at this point, 5 months old, that this one needs to be reprinted because it's newer than, 151. But think about it, they're both still in competitive play. So what is the argument being made? It's very strange to me. 151, yeah, at one point you were able to get them at MSRP at release, but in the past year, you have not really been able to. Past 6 months, you definitely have not been able to. And 151, in my opinion, is a perfect example of just the whole MSRP, things have to go back. It's just not true, because 151, it hasn't gotten reprinted, into the ground to the point where things are MSRP. Multiple products have gotten reprinted, never went to MSRP. ETBs really never got reprinted, and they're over $200, which is, double Prismatic Evolution. So I think, the whole argument being made with Prismatic going to, MSRP, well, look at 151 and tell me why that hasn't happened. Why hasn't Pokemon reprinted these into, the ground and made them super cheap? Why have they reprinted certain products and they haven't gone to MSRP? It's a lot of things to talk about, right? It's very strange to me that people don't make this comparison when they talk about, Prismatic being printed into the ground, going to MSRP, and crashing, because in my opinion, when you just look at the numbers and you see 151, how expensive this set can get, and you look at how expensive the cards are, and you look at Prismatic, how expensive the cards are, look at the products. Prismatic, I'm telling you, it looks cheap, but everybody is emotional because the set is newer. I'm telling you, once this gets probably another year older, people are not going to complain about it as much as they are right now, because guess what? Time solves everything in this space. When things get a little bit older and it's not the newest, hottest thing ever, people stop caring, people stop whining, and people just accept the fact of the price. And that's what's happened to 151, and why people don't complain about 151 prices for products. People only complain about the newest stuff. So just want to show you guys this. What do you think? Do you think 151 is extremely expensive and they should print into the ground? Why haven't they done it? Like, it's crazy to me that people argue Prismatic so much, but I would argue 151 needs to be printed into the ground, if anything, out of Prismatic, because it's literally quadruple MSRP, because we are still talking about MSRP because that means something now. 151, they should reprint it into the ground because it's super expensive. So that's all I want to talk about here. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.